He studied chemistry engineering. He was at the Hacettepe University and he had a master's degree and a doctorate degree, and then he was a research associate at the same university. In 2002, he was at the Energy Market Regulatory Board. He was the Energy Expert Group Chair, and in 2008 and 2012, he was the head of Tariff Department. In 2012, he was at the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources. He has many scientific articles published, and he is also a part-time research associate at Hacettepe University. He's married and he has 2 kids. He didn't take our Prime Minister's advice, I guess. Oh, I see, now you have 3 kids. Okay, we congratulate him. He has 3 kids. So this wasn't informed. Okay, you have a baby 6 months old. Okay. On my left, we have Turkish Electricity Transmission Company General Director. He was born in Akşehir, Konya. He studied electrical engineering. In 1981, he worked at Turkish Electricity Association. He was the transmission line project director at TEDAŞ and TEİDAŞ, and he was at the grid group directorate of Ankara Measuring Instruments. He was at the plants and administration group directorate. He was the group director of transmission and operation director general. So he was the Turkish Electricity Transmission Company. He was appointed to Directorate General by proxy, and now he sits still in his position personally. Normand Duyringer is our guest. He is the director of South Europe region in Nordex Energy. He started his professional life in 1993 as an engineer. He has been working at Nordex since 1997 in Spain and in Portugal. He took part as a business development general. He was the sales general director, and now he is in charge of he's in charge of South Europe and Africa regions, including Turkey. So I would like to give some information about myself too. I was born in Denizli in 1691. I also studied School of Economics and Administrative Studies, just like our Director General of TEDAŞ. And then after the September 12th, I studied Business Administration in Marmara University, and my post-graduation was in Istanbul University on International Relations. I started my master's degree at London School of Economics, but because of many reasons, I came back to Turkey. I worked in private sector in Denizli. I started my own business as Turkuaz Textile, and then I was at the executive board of Turkish Exporters Assembly. I was the Denizli Exporters Association head. I was at the head of textile and apparel in Turkish Union of Chambers and Commodity Exchanges. I was the Denizli mayor, and I resigned to become a MP, and I am currently in the Turkish National Assembly. And 3 weeks ago, I took over the chairmanship from our Malatya MP Mücahit Fındıklı of Chair of Industry, Trade, National Sources and Information Commission. So I entered to the energy sector and I became closer, and I hope I can benefit to this sector. Today's subject is the wind energy of Turkey and its role in energy diversification. In our current position, of course, the technical details will be discussed by our Director Generals, but I want to give you a general evaluation. As Turkey, at the sea level and under the sea level, we have a potential of 30,000 on land, and in the sea we have 10,000 megawatts. In total, 40,000 megawatts of potential. We have some installed and in process plants, and we have some projects going on. In Turkey, wind energy grabs the attention from all over the world. It's a shining star. Its attraction still continues. Of course, until now, Turkey went through many troubles legally, or the turmoil between the institutions. Turkey faced many challenges. In the opening speech, I also mentioned that the institutions of the government and their authority disorder should not be paid by its citizens. I mean, we should not be bearing these problems. So today, if in some way, I mean, like a tender or some sort of a competition, or even by drawing lots, if an investment is made, the license should not be completed by the Ministry of Defense or the Air Forces or the Ministry of Forestry. There should not be such processes. This is not the duty of the investor. This should be given as a package. This is the investment, this is our potential, this should be said, and everything should be made easier for the investor. So we took many steps. The status of the politics, I mean, as the Commission and also our government supports us. The Turkish Grand National Assembly or the government should stand side by side. I mean, of course, everybody agrees with this, but that bureaucracy, that structure that was never seen before, but everybody is pointing fingers at, is at somewhere, and that bureaucracy is hindering the process. But generally, I mean, for the last 11 years, the will that governs things like the same. I mean, if we want to ease the investment climate, and if we want to bring it to a world standard, and even if we want to take it beyond, I mean, as Turkey, from now on, we try to fix the agenda, we try to fix our internal problems, but we have to design the future, we have to plan the future, and we have to prepare groundworks for the future investments. So this is what we are after. Turkey is highly dependent in terms of energy. Today, as Turkey, when we look at our renewables, we use it at 4%, and in total it makes 600, and please correct me if I'm wrong, in total 600 megawatts of geothermal capacity in Turkey, but today we use it of 150 or 200 megawatts. And in total we have a potential of 400 or 500 more megawatts. So as Turkey, we have such a huge potential in, maybe not in geothermal, but we have a huge potential in wind power, in hydroelectricity. These are our national sources. So without being dependent to external sources, we can use our own sources with our own sun and sea and wind. We can produce this energy. And as Turkey, of course, this was not our title. Our title is not sea or solar or geothermal, but in terms of wind, I wanted to state our potential. So from now on, for our 2023 goal, where is this wind energy? This was my introduction. And with this introduction in this frame, I would like to give the floor starting from right, and I would like to take everyone's opinions. We have 500 kilowatts of wind turbines and about its use. Okay. During those period there was no licenses, there was only auto producer license. So this meant that the plant had to produce its own energy first, and the excess energy was supposed to be sold to grids and networks. Now, of course, the auto producer license, before the Energy Market Regulatory Board, was not possible to sell that excessive energy, and you were supposed to have a plant. There was supposed to be electricity need nearby, and then according to the need, the necessary amount of wind turbines were supposed to be installed. This was a hard decision, and then in 2000, again, this was made by Demirel Holding, and with the auto producer license, we had wind plants, 17 wind plants, each could produce 600 megawatts. And after the Energy Market Regulatory Board in 2001, the production license made it possible to produce. So in terms of selling electricity, if a legal entity wants to produce energy, they had to get license, and then they could produce energy. Of course, this was just the beginning, and during those times the renewables were not in the context. They needed a production license, and during those times this was possible, but it is still possible. So after getting a license and preparing the legal framework for this affected the input and the output, and the purchase guarantees and the incentives were established, and then this process was in the investment stage. I mean, after 2005 in Turkey, wind investments gained momentum, because after 2005 the electricity you produce from wind power was stated that it would be purchased by the government. I mean, no matter what your expenditure is, at least your input expenditure could be shaped. And then with the incentives, investments came. By the way, incentives included the exception from VAT or a cost reduction of 85%, etc. With these incentives and investments, now the results became visible, because electricity production made it possible to earn money. And then investments increased, and now we are at the stage I will show you now. And after that, in the total installed energy in Turkey, well, with the licenses and the ability to sell electricity, etc., you could sell it to the free market with dual agreements. You could sell the electricity to the firms. And when we look at today's situation, how much of installed capacity do we need, and where is the wind energy? And according to the TEDAŞ data, as you can see that by the end of the October result, our installed capacity, our installed power was 62,000 megawatts, and the wind power is around 2,000 megawatts, which makes like 4.4% here. And in the future, and between 1980 and between 2011, our installed power and its distribution by energy sources can be seen at the graphics. Wind energy and its lack of using was because of the ability to sell it, because it couldn't be sold. But now there are many incentives for this. According to the TEDAŞ data, specific hours and specific periods require different energy consumption. So at least we need the wind to produce 30 or 35,000 megawatts. We have some studies going on about it, but now our installed power is 62,000. The power, the voltage, etc., you can see it in the graphics. Sometimes we can go up to 40,000. And with this, where is wind power? So when we ask it, and what can it become? When we ask these questions, I mean, if the wind is 4.4% now, can it be 40% or 30%? Or according to the capacity projections for Turkey, 10 years later, can we take it? If we can take it to 100,000 megawatts, how can wind evolve? When we look at the wind installed power, and when we think about the security reasons too, wind power cannot exceed 20%. With a rough calculation, after 8 or 10 years, according to the TEDAŞ projections, of course, our power can go up to 80, 70 or 100%. The wind can make up of 16,000 megawatts, and the system can support it. The wind power cannot go 100% because you are dependent on the winds, you are dependent on the turbines, the frequency is sometimes challenging, and the main supporter and the main sources should be existing. So here, when we ask whether Turkey has a potential of 16,000 megawatts of wind energy potential, of course we have such a potential. Home products, buying of home products should be supported at this particular issue to support the development of wind energy. So when the investments increase, of course this will be a huge development, but the cost goes up to $1 million or $2 million for 1 megawatt of plant. When we do a rough calculation, the expenditure goes up to $20 billion. The capacity projections and the enhancing of the transformers will also benefit, but the progress is positive, so we say why not. And lastly, our FİDAŞ group investments, I would like to talk a bit about them. For 2,800 megawatts, we have investments, and until 2014 we will increase our capacity to 300 megawatts. So if we can produce 350 for 3,000 megawatts, this will be a great development, but of course this will not be enough. Thank you so much. The most important thing for me was Turkey's producing and investing on its own technology. This is very important, as Turkey, if we want to reach 16,000 megawatts of production, we have to invest like $20 billion, and if you want to reach our 2023 goals, we need investments, and I guess in total this makes $50 billion of investment. And for this sort of investment, Turkey should create its own technology. Turkey should not follow the technology, but Turkey's technology should be followed, and Turkey must show itself. If we want to reach 20,000 megawatts of production with wind energy, this will fundamentally change the industry and the future of Turkey. So, Zafer Demircan, our Director General, the floor is yours now. Esteemed chairs, participants, I welcome you all. Can we please reflect my presentation? First of all, Turkey and Turkey's wind power, and before identifying its position, we have to understand our production portfolio and how we should approach it. This is what I would like to talk about today. What sort of a production profile should we have? And for the investors who are interested in wind energy, I would like to make a few points about how to analyze this better. I will not go through many numbers or data, but I will talk about the concepts. The general identification of the system is required, and which terms mean what. This is our aim for this presentation. So how do we develop? For the last 10 years, our production increased, our production doubled, and in the coming 10 years, we will also double in production. In the last 10 years, our installed power doubled, and for the 2023, this should be doubled again. And we should have different portfolios while doubling it. The participation of the private sector should increase. Its participation was roughly 30% before, but now it's increased dramatically. The process should rapidly evolve, and when financing instruments also developed, this contributed to our development as well. We signed many agreements about this development, and when we talk about the renewables and its installed power should be increased too. So as the ministry, we have some dynamics in the system, and when we evaluate it, we think that the production should be enhanced. This is not about creating a production plan, but the grid is also an influencing factor. When we create portfolios, the sources must include the renewables, the energy export issue, energy consumption by seasons. These are all the variables. Here, the production, the consumption, and the grid has a very sensitive relationship. One change can influence all. And in terms of influencing and in terms of enhancing this portfolio, when we look at the factors that influence the production and the consumption, we see the population growth, we see the population growth of the households and their consumption habits. So these habits and the fact that households are smaller in number but higher in, and when the welfare increased, these consumption habits also changed, and these changes dramatically influenced our portfolio too. In consumption, seasons are very influential, and these features are very influential. So our smart grid feature and our production possibilities and
houses are so smaller in size but higher in number. Technologic investments include smart grid. Also, accession of new energies to the system, to the grid, brings with it the necessity of new technologies. One issue we need to focus is the leakage and loss of electricity within the grid, and I should say that we have progressed a lot in this field. Electricity has resulted in significant changes in people's lifestyles. Let me give you a couple of examples. So it shows the difference between electricity consumption on a Thursday and a Friday. So it is clearly shown here that lifestyles are changing, and this has an impact on the pattern of electricity consumption. And let's have a look at the hours during which Fenerbahce was in a game in May 2013. So the electricity consumption is seemingly having an increasing pattern here, not only during the game but also after the game, because people were apparently watching the programs after the game. Some of our colleagues have also told us that during the half-time of games, energy consumption even boosts further. So while watching the game, people are only focused on the TV, but during halftime, they rush to their kettles to prepare tea, coffee for themselves. Therefore, an additional energy consumption is observed here. That's why our colleagues are also waiting for the halftime very carefully, because this is the time when they are supposed to activate additional energy in the system.
Günlük yaşamımızda yaptığımız her iş bizim elektrik tüketiminde yönetilmesi gereken yeni bir süreç ekliyor. Bunun diğer bir örneği mesela
There is an obvious relation between the use of internet and electricity consumption. In Ramadan, we also observe that the electricity consumption is highly related to the lifestyles if we have a look at these figures during sahur and iftar.
gösteren güzel bir örnek.
I said that I didn't want to go into detailed data, but let me emphasize something. In the last 5 years, the average capacity that we integrated into the system has tripled. Currently, we are facing no problems in terms of energy absence or capacity insufficiency.
Arz mühendisliği kapsamında hiçbir şekilde bir kapasite yetersizliği gibi bir sorunumuz yok. Yine baktığımızda bu fazla numerik buluşmayacağım. Burada da kurulu kapasitemiz en üst körde.
You can also see here our installed capacity. Our capacity is huge, but there is some non-used capacity as well due to some issues related to wind, and some of our plants are going through revisions. But our current capacity is sufficient enough to meet our energy demands. Here you can also see the energy consumption patterns during Bayrams, holidays and the weekends.
Elektrik tüketimine nasıl etki ettiğini gösteren güzel örnekler.
You cannot ignore natural gas while preparing your electricity portfolio, because some part of our electricity generation is stemming from gas usage and gas generation. The share of natural gas in electricity generation and the fact that our natural gas plants can be activated during our peak times require us to create a synchronization between electricity and natural gas.
Yakıtının da doğal gaz olması açısından doğal gazın kendisiyle elektrik aslında senkron hareket etmesi gereken iki husus.
Most of us think that we consume electricity at home, but actually we use natural gas. For example, our refrigerators are operating with gas. But we need to have a managed process when it comes to natural gas. And with this managed process, we aim to create a natural gas capacity to help us even during its peak times of use when it's being used for heating purposes. Therefore, we are increasingly, continually strengthening our pipeline capacity. We are dedicated to reaching the targets that our government set for us for 2023. Among them are $2 trillion of economic growth by 2023. I'm not going to read it all, but in terms of energy, we are trying to reach the average figures in the EU. This is only possible if we double our generation. But we calculated it all, and if we look at our capacity, energy capacity that we have today, and if we look at it from the perspective of Atatürk Dam, we can say that we have now almost 27 Atatürk dams, and we need to increase it up to 63 Atatürk dams by 2023. And in the future we need to establish almost more than 20 Atatürk dams. This, we think, will require an investment size of $110 billion. So maybe our wind investors can now have a clear picture as to where they want to position themselves. The energy we generated, which was 1 billion kilowatt hours, reached 423,000 households. So, this figure will meet the demands of 4,000 for 423,000 households, and it will also meet this demand on an annual basis. And the total capacity we need to install to generate 1 billion kilowatt hours of energy is 656 megawatts for solar, 457 megawatts for wind, 358 megawatts for hydro energy. And when we include the cost of fuels into the capex, so I mean when we add OPEX with capex, producing solar energy will cost $122, wind energy $83, hydro energy $82, and $70 for coal on a megawatt hours basis. Don't be carried away by the numbers, but this is how the general outlook is. We need to strengthen the grid and increase it. No matter how you create your portfolio, some production resources depend on geographical aspects, and sometimes you can't deal with them, and you need to transform them into electricity at their place, and wind is an example to such resources. For us, it's very important to transfer the energy where the production is high to the areas where the consumption is high. And for this, we need a quality grid infrastructure. Almost 25% of our electricity generation from wind is now distributed to nearly 9 cities in Turkey, primarily including Istanbul. As the ministry, we are going through some preparations, and this slide shows the seriously levels of possible problems both in the field of wind and natural gas. Each level has a code and created scenarios corresponding to them. And depending on the climatic environment, we decide as to which scenario we should take into account every day. We are trying to model the demand depending on the meteorology results and the climate, daily climate. We have forecasting models based on 3 months, 6 months and a year. We have also prepared some risk maps which showed us that the top risks in terms of energy are revolving around whether we will have sufficient amount of natural gas. In this regard, risk investors should take clear and careful steps to manage electricity. Turkey is adopting a very proper way to manage natural gas. However, we'd also like to eliminate the gas-related risks. This is how you can come up with a solid structure. Lastly, I'd like to touch upon investments a little bit further. The return over investment in this industry takes place at least in 9 to 10 years. The first year with the investment experiences quite a lot of procedures for permits, but enterprises or the operation reacts to the investments in 9 to 15 years in minimum. I don't want to steal from the time of other speakers, that's why I'm taking it quite fast. We have carried out a study on the investment environment. We analyzed all the investment processes, including all the permits and procedures that the public authorities are carrying out relating to the investment. Our aim was to spot problems within this process, and the country of ministers in coordination with related authorities were conveyed about how they can really improve the investment process. And I hope this communication helps facilitate the process relating to the investments in wind plants. Thank you for your attention. Many thanks to Zafer Demircan, the Director General for energy affairs. I'm sure even those who have no idea about electricity understood your point. I mean, those whose only relation with electricity is just about turning off and on the electricity. Your speech was so clear, and you shared with us important information about 2023 targets. We are all aware of the potential that Turkey holds and how much it needs to progress to fill in the gaps. Unfortunately, we don't have rivers enough to create 61 dams, but we are lucky to have wind for it. We also boast our solar energy. We have the required human resources for it that can contribute to this process. I notice that when I'm talking about wind and renewable energies, young fellows show a great interest. It's also noticeable that our investors have a lot of expectations from this field. So all the circumstances and all the necessary components for a growth in this field have gathered together. I don't know which is the best wind for you, but probably you are being pushed by the wind types that you also mentioned towards the 2023 targets. And I'm sure Director General has a few words to say about generating such energy. That's why I'm giving the floor to him, the Director General of Turkish Electricity Transmission Company, TWEC. Esteemed chairs, my fellow colleagues, bureaucrats, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all. A transmission system in Turkey is the essential component of electricity generation and consumption. For the generated energy to be transferred to consumption destinations, the voltage of generation plants should be increased so that we transmit the electricity to the furthest points without any interruption. But the resources are not to be transported, like water or wind, and the generation destinations are different from the consumption destinations. That's why actually generation plants, energy plants, have taken on the role to transmit the energy generated. This is how the grid system was established, and this is how it works in the world. So all the energy generation plants are connected to these systems, and the system grows even further with higher level of integration. This is how all other people, no matter how far away they are, can reach or can be provided with electricity. As you know, we were connected to the system in October 2010. We are a part of a huge system with a capacity of 600,000 megawatts. We ranked the 5th in terms of consumption, after France, Germany, Spain and Italy respectively. Let me just tell you about our generation system a little bit with the slides. Among TEA's roles are to manage the electricity system, to manage the investments in the electricity systems, to operate and maintain the electricity system, to prepare all the capacity projections and carry out international interconnection studies. Here you can see our installed capacity, the length of our voltage lines. We are quite powerful. Here are our installed capacity, the length of our transmission systems depending on the voltage levels. We have an installed capacity of 61,000 megawatts, and in such a system our transformers installed capacity is 108,000 megawatts. So we don't have any problems when it comes to our transmission system and network, but some regional problems of course occur depending on the immediate increases, sharp increases in the consumption. An example is the use of water pumps in south and southeastern Turkey, or the use of heaters again in south or southeastern Turkey during winter. But I think we have managed a lot to deal with these problems, especially within a period of 3 or 4 years. This is the total consumption throughout Turkey. You see the increase of consumption by the years. For example, in 2011 the increase was 9.4%. In 2012 this increase was reduced to 5%, and for 2013 the increase is even lower. In 2011 our peak demand reached 40,000 megawatts. Now we are around 30,000 megawatts. The share of wind energy is on increase, as our fellows mentioned. We ranked the second all over the world when it comes to the increase, and I think the increase should be even faster. Here are the resources of the installed capacity in further detail.
Bilgilerinize sunuluyor. Barajlı ve akarsu olan hidrolik kaynaklarımız ithal kömür, taş kömürü, doğalgaz, çok yakıtlılar. Yaklaşık olarak bunların hepsini topladığımızda kömür, doğalgaz ve hidrolik olarak
we see that there is an even distribution among natural resources, including coal and natural gas.
Tüketim noktasını, yani Türkiye'nin tüketimi noktasına geçtiğimizde doğalgazın payının daha çok olduğunu göreceğiz.
So the performance of the natural gas becomes prominent due to failures in some plants using other energy resources.
Arızalardan dolayı çalışma performansları doğalgazları öne çıkarıyor. Bunu da bilgilerinize sunmak isterim. Evet, Türkiye
So here is the improvement or the increase of the wind energy's share.
676 megawata şu anda ulaşmış durumdayız.
The installed capacity is now 2,676 megawatts. Çeşme, Urla, Karaburun, mostly the west part of Turkey is receiving a lot of wind. Hatay's wind performance is not bad either. Here are the already operating wind power plants, as well as the plants that are planned to be commissioned in near future. A capacity of 2,680 megawatts is already under operation, a capacity of 2,579 megawatts is not yet commissioned. There are also applicants with a capacity of 2,666 megawatts, and their applications are still pending. And those who received a license but haven't yet started working on anything have a capacity of 295 megawatts. We have integrated a capacity of 259 megawatts according to the relevant article of the new law. And our total capacity is 11,226 megawatts. A capacity of 2,680 megawatts is already under operation, and the others are going through construction period. Our expectations in line with 2023 targets is to see the wind installed capacity at 120,000 megawatts, and the peak is expected to increase up to 80,000 megawatts.
Tabii biz hepinizin hatırlayacağı gibi 78.000 megawattlık bir res başvurularının
Europe is a capacity of 600,000 megawatts, and Turkey within this system has a capacity of 78,000 megawatts. It looks huge. However, you can easily understand that when it's compared against a 40,000 megawatts capacity, it's an abnormal figure. That's why we work towards reducing this level to normal figures, and we managed to reduce it down to 12,000 megawatts. And the capacity was allocated over 20%, which is normally higher than normal capacity percentages that can be given. And the peak of 40,000 megawatt actually has a share of 30%, around 30%. By the end of 2023, it is expected to reach 20%. But depending on the investors, we can increase it up to 25%. According to the new regulation, which was published on the 2nd of November 2013, the Turkish power transmission company TWEC will announce the 5 and 10-year interconnection capacities allocated for solar and wind power plants with regard to connection points and or on regional basis every year by April the 1st. For any given year, wind and solar power pre-license applications will be accepted on the first and last 5 working days of October respectively. And these applications are required to include wind measures of at least 1 year, which will have been recorded over the previous 3 years.
Sonra da bu ölçümler sonucunda kuruma başvurulacak. 17. madde geçici 17. madde uyarınca lisans yönetmeliğinin
TWEC and transmission companies inform the authority of the regional generation plants capacities that can be interconnected to their systems for the following 5 and 10 years after 2013, following the entry into force of this regulation, 3 months after this regulation, and they are supposed to announce these capacities on their internet pages. The capacities are announced for EMRA and wind plant applications are received by EMRA and evaluated within the context of pre-license applications. So on this slide, it is very clearly shown that there is this complicated process about evaluating the applications. According to the new regulation, we cancelled our limitations and restrictions. Interconnections will be made after all the evaluations are carried out relating to the load and imbalances in the voltage and the lines. Regarding the previous applications and the opinions relating to their interconnection, individual applications were evaluated and capacities were allocated for the wind power plants which weren't intersecting with each other.
Yine bu geçmişte yapılan başvuruların verilen bağlantı görüşlerinin TM kapasitesi kesişmeyen restlerde tekli başvuru olarak değerlendirerek kapasite yatırması gerçekleştirildi.
When it comes to multiple applications, we had to organize a competition. It means that we have a lot of applications. In order to avoid any kind of conflict or a chaos situation, we needed to organize this competition. There are also some technical criteria, especially about turbines, including turbine resistance in case of failure, active power management, frequency reaction, and active power capacity. Turbines are nowadays manufactured with cutting-edge technology, and wind plants are now able to stand within the system as other generators. There are not any consumption points where the wind is generated by wind power plants. Therefore, we needed to plan a catchment study. This is an important step because it is going to gain the resources like wind into the system.
Kazandırılması için önemli bir çalışmaydı. Sorunlarıyla birlikte çoğunu bizlerin de desteğiyle aşıyorsunuz. Sorunlarıyla birlikte doğru bir yaklaşım, doğru bir çözümdü. Burada büyük oluşturulan havza merkezlerini 380 kW, 154 kW olarak örneklemiş arkadaşlarımız rüzgar için.
The General Directorate of Renewable Energies organized a project called RITM, Wind Power Observation and Estimation Project. So wind investors in this context are required to take into account the technical devices which can be used by this project. This center is very important because it helps wind be observed and managed more properly. Such information is also needed to be communicated to our company. We also have specific wind units that are working on this issue. We may do the same for solar power. With such a SCADA system, we can observe the wind energy and solar energy. Even though natural gas is imported, It is very helpful in that it can be directly activated in 15 minutes in the wind generation system.
Hızlı devreye girmesi, 15 dakika içerisinde devreye girme gibi özelliğinden dolayı rüzgarın performansını artırmasına katkısında burada göz önünde bulunması gerekiyor.
Toparlayalım Sayın Genel.
Hayır, hemen. Evet.
Our company's interconnection agreements apply to wind power plants as well. Depending on financial difficulties, investors are encouraged to make the investment within the context of a loan to be refunded later. If investors aren't interested in doing that, TWEC will always try to include such projects in their investment program. But of course, in order to avoid any interruptions in the process, TWEC also receives a security letter. We are continually increasing the capacity without the need to create new lines, transmission lines. And thank you very much. We have time limitations, that's why I can't give a brief summary about your presentation. But what I see here is that we are ready for our 2023 target, which is 20,000 megawatts, and we can even make it up to 25,000 megawatts. Now the word is the Director for Southern Europe of Nordex Energy.
Good afternoon, dear ladies, dear gentlemen, esteemed colleagues on the panel. It's a great pleasure for me to be invited to talk to you now. The issue we are talking about is the place of wind power in the Turkish energy mix. I'm starting with a few words about Nordex, about my company. Then I will look into some key points, wind power in relation to conventional power plants. Then I would like to look into, with a few keywords, into wind power against other renewable energies. Then I look at local content, localization, and then at the end some conclusions. So Nordex is not only a turbine manufacturer, but we also deliver a full wind farm as a system. So we can do civil works, we can do electrical works, so the balance of plant in order to complete a wind farm. We have done that for more than 25 years now. We are doing that in several countries. We are installed in more than 25, and we have a very important installation also on the Turkish market. At the moment, we have a total installed basis in Turkey of 670 megawatt and additional 180 megawatt under construction, so in total more than 800 megawatt. We are employing at the moment directly a little bit more than 80 persons, but of course the jobs created by doing our business in Turkey are many more. So we take BOP, the balance of plant locally, we do towers locally in Turkey, and we will do blades in Turkey very soon, and other things to come, I'm quite sure about them. No, that's one missing. That's a pity. Yeah. I updated it too late. So the next slide I would have brought was just to show you how fast the market is developing in wind power and how global we are in this wind market. We brought up a new turbine with the first installation end of 2011. Today, 2 years later, this turbine has been installed more than 300 times, but it has been installed in Europe, it's going to be installed in South Africa, it's going to be installed in South America, it has been installed in North America, and I also can announce that we are going to install it very soon in Asia, meaning in Turkey. And this is happening in only 2 years, so this industry has to be very fast. Next slide. Wind power plants against conventional power plants. Wind energy is close to parity price. We heard that already also this morning from Gerrit Hassan, who gave a very bright picture into wind against other technologies. I want to emphasize another thing on wind. We have 20 years flat production cost. You can calculate it. It's a first initial investment, and then you have maintenance costs, but you don't have any fossil fuel costs, which is a big advantage. In combination with hydropower, we believe that supply can also be warranted. I think a big advantage of wind is that we distribute also wealth to rural area, which is very important in times of migration and creation of mega cities. We have, what I also see as an advantage, with independent power procurement, a culture in this country installed which contributes to increase the entrepreneurial development, which is very important to continue on the excellent growth path you are at the moment. And then, of course, wind is creating jobs. I will come back to that a little bit later in your country. Of course, conventional power is an old story. With the power, you can drive exactly the function of the demand, which with the intermittent energies like wind you cannot do. You can, in most of the cases, stabilize the grid operation by the conventional power plants. You can, of course, also warrant the power supply as long as you have the fossils available. You can scale it unlimited as long as you have the fossil fuels available. And you have only a few players which are in the market, maybe only one, when we look back also in Turkey, some 15 years. And the regulatory frame is relatively simple. These are, I would say, key issues which are in favor of saying which is conventional power plants. When we look at localization, the first slide, just to show you how easy it is to say that even we are a foreign manufacturer of wind turbines, with every turbine which goes into the ground, from the whole investment, 50% easily can stay as added value in your country. And this comes from local tower manufacturing, it comes from local blade manufacturing, it comes from, of course, balance of plant, including the grid connection works. And I think this is a very, very important figure. And of course, with increasing penetration of the Turkish market, this number will go up, also from our side. Just a small comment here, as all the governments are normally looking into to attract as soon as possible local assembly of turbines. Please be aware, the local assembly of a turbine is very emblematic, but the added value is around 2% only of such a project. Next slide, wind against other renewable energies. So what I think is really an argument in favor of